Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, yeah. The tip of the tongue, the teeth, the lips. Okay, motherfucker. Oh, you slow down time. You oh. All right.
This is the 112th episode of Middle Ground, and we want you to help us decide what the next 112 episodes
I watched a minute of this and I stopped it because fucking hell, this is gonna. I think this is gonna be retarded.
will be. Join our Middle Ground Patreon community and make Middle Ground with us.
But Hassan Piker, where's Ben Shapiro? Like, Ben Shapiro would not fucking do that. Hassan wouldn't do it either.
I was chosen to read the following prompt. White Americans have way more advantages than black Americans.
The real
a
answer
rarity
is
here.
probably.
It would seem so.
Do white Americans have more advantages because they're white, or do just white Americans have advantages because of historic factors? I think that people want to argue at the end of the day over whether it's because you're white or not. I think that the answer is because you're white in the past, and that's how it kind of carries over to today. You know, even in times of the United States history where black people have tried to build wealth, you know, with the Tulsa riots and everything, where, yeah, that this wealth has been destroyed. And something that's upsetting to me is when conservatives talk about how we can't blame the past for what's happening in the present. That is true to some extent, but then in the next breath, they'll talk about how important it is to have dual-parent households, how important it is to have a strong family, to have responsibility passed on from parent to child. And we've seen in the past that because of racial issues, that process has been severely disrupted.
The funny thing is that agreeing with all these things is when I did my research when I was younger, which arrived me to my standpoint of being a conservative, because I believed it was racist, Democrat, liberal ideology.
This is the craziest take, bro. Like, when it's just it is just such an interesting take to have to go from like he's like, out of all the shit that black people had to go through in this country, he's like, the thing that fucked us the most was getting checks from
and
the
policies
government.
dating all the way back to the 1800s, all the way up to the 1960s, and then the purported big switch. But I think it was more so when Democrats decided to be a bit more cloak and dagger about their true opinions of black people and be more secretive and more, oh, we want to help you by, you know, doing these things and seeing them as inferior.
Doing what things?
Affirmative action, welfare, all sorts
So
of
wait,
things that
welfare.
eventually
He's like, that's the garbage. The slavery was helping us. We were getting stronger. We were working harder. All of a sudden, we fucking get checks from the government. We're doing nothing. We're doing fucking nothing, bro. I am gonna play a game while I watch this stuff. Oh my god. Hold on though, because my sister just texted me, and now I have to see. News. Oh my god. Oh. Me and my sister, we had this talk when the Jonas Brothers got married, because I was like, one of them's gonna get divorced, like statistically, right? Damn, bro. My money was on Nick. which I think I did say Nick, which was a mistake. But also, actually don't remember because it was either Nick or Joe because we all knew Kevin. Kevin's solid. Kevin's fucking solid, bro. That's who we know. I can't remember if I said Nick or Joe. I want to say that I said Joe, but I think I might have said. I don't know though. Maybe I did say Joe because I knew Kevin was solid, and Nick and Priyanka. I was like, that one was like, if there's a divorce, it's because she's leaving him. You know, like he's not going anywhere. But fuck, bro. Already? I thought they had a kid. Don't they have a kid? No. These are ringless. Sin anillo. Sin anillo. Dang. Dang, bro. They said walking around. Ringless. Point is, we should have put money. Probably would have made money. Can you bet on on famous people's relationships? Is that a thing we can do? I do not know.
So ruin our culture and place us where we are now.
So
but I want to get back to the history of it because we're talking about.
This guy's takes are so fucking wild, bro.
I want to make sure we're clear. Giving them money hurt them, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yes, giving them, because if your father's out of the home, that's when we give you the money. If you're living in this housing,
so then give them the money while the dad's in.
I did like a black woman's having a baby. And she's like, to the dad. She's like, get the fuck out of here so I can get this government check, bro. Fucking leave.
Well, then give them the money while the dad's in the home.
If you're working this amount of hours and getting less than this amount of dollars, you're getting money from the government. Yes, it is incentivizing.
You're throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
I don't even know what that means in this scenario because yes.
Okay, you want
to talk about throwing babies out with the bathwater? Margaret Sanger wanted to exterminate the black race because she thought they were weeds. So yeah, we can literally talk about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. That's what Margaret Sanger, that's what Democrat policies wanted to do to my people. So that's why I feel so strongly about it, because it is these policies that date back centuries that were built off of the death and poverty of my people.
Let's take a breath. So,
I'm breathing.
Okay.
So a lot of babies aren't, but I am, sadly.
I don't know what that means. When I say throw the baby out with the bathwater, you want to completely get rid of welfare, okay? Or at least the I don't want to put that on you, you haven't said that, but the conservative apparatus does, clearly. So giving money to a group of people does not hurt them.
I mean, sure, if you're talking about a lottery, just hey, take money. But
yes.
there are strings attached to that money.
Take all the money.
There are strings attached to that money.
Give them millions. Make them all millionaires. I don't care. Giving money to black people does not hurt them.
And that has not happened, though. That has not happened.
What do you mean?
That has not happened.
It
hasn't been a reparation. It hasn't been this or that. It has been a welfare program, Great Societies Act that was built off of the idea of, hey, we get these families split up. We get these people living here.
So then let them keep the family together and keep all the money.
I mean, I guess so, but I guarantee you there is no way that
Why would you not advocate for that?
So in your, I guess, research of like history of this country and everything, do you find like the Reconstruction era and like the failures of like what it wanted to be and then what it ended up being, and then which led into had downstream effects to enter into the Jim Crow era, and you have policies like redlining that influence how schools are funded. The downstream effects of slavery, do you think put black people as generally in a worse position than white Americans?
I think generation by generation the effects of slavery have been diluted, but generation by generation the effects of racism, welfare-based policies, and things of that nature became even more great. So in the 1880s or so, when we had our first black members of Congress, which were indeed Republicans, I think that was a great start for things. But obviously we had terrible things that happened, like the Tulsa massacre, among black people being chased out of their homes by the KKK.
Sure.
All funded by the Democrat Party, all supported by the Democrat Party.
Well, I need to stop you there. Can you attribute not to the party but to the ideology? Because I think when you...
I did say Joe. I was fucking right. Bro, I need to start a relationship advice show because fucking... I got the sixth sense, bro. When it comes to amor, when it comes to love. Son of a bitch. I'm always right, okay? Every time. That's why I have to stream, so the people know. Alright, my teammate got it. My teammate got it. What a teammate. What a motherfucking teammate.
You think, regardless of whatever the party switch was, traditionally conservative values did not, like, that's more aligned with, you know, more racist policies in this
Very
country.
difficult
Like,
to
very
compare 2020's conservatism to 1880s conservatism. Oh, I was loving the one before.
So personally, I feel like there's really only one thing that white people have a true advantage over black people with, and it's that white people are less likely to be forced into a box. It happens with black people onto other black people, but it especially happens with white liberals onto black conservatives, where we are told that we are supposed to think a certain way, be a certain way, and if we're not, then we're called all these names like etc. And the worst of all is bootlicker, because I hate when a white liberal tells me as a black man that I'm a bootlicker, because then I ask, whose boot am I licking? Because you're telling me as a white person that me as a black person that I'm licking your boot because I don't think in this box that you want me to frame my mentality in. That to me is real racism, and that's what we need to stop.
The thing is it's not that black or white, bro. Maybe you are being a bootlicker. Maybe you fucking are. Maybe you're goddamn Sam Jackson and Django, bro. And you don't even know it. If Sam Jackson and Django got called a bootlicker, he'd be like, no, I'm not. I'm not a bootlicker. There's no bootlicker that's like, I'm a fucking bootlicker. I lick boots. And I love it. I'm here for it.
Allowing to happen to us, because black people are so quick now to not branch out and to have new ways of thinking, or to go into careers like agriculture and these other career paths that black people don't typically get into. It's not because of racism stopping them from getting in there. It's because we're told for so long that you have to follow this path and you have to think a certain way.
I think America is a great place for a black person. I think I'm an American. Anything that's available to you is available to me and mine.
I've personally never experienced white people having way more privileges than me. Like, I'm sure you could find certain institutions where black people are treated differently, but in general, I don't think that I've missed out on anything because of being black. And if anything, it's given me more of a voice because people will want to hear what I say now because I'm black. So if anything, I have more of a platform now just on the basis of being a black conservative and saying what's not popular than I would if I was just a white person who was also
like,
conservative.
yeah, I mean, I'm grifting. It's actually so much better for my grift that I'm black. Maybe she's not grifting. Maybe she really is.
I agree with the Supreme Court's decision to end affirmative action.
I feel like Destiny's gonna say yes to this.
I think I'm not going to start. Someone else can start. Sorry.
I think affirmative action has served its purpose. I think that it was necessary for a particular time, and I think that every black person knows how to get into college. Every black, I mean, you can pull out the names, the Oprah, the President Obama. You can pull out the head of Time Warner was black man, the Forbes was black man. We know what to do now. We don't need affirmative action anymore. And to me, affirmative action is offensive sometimes, especially nowadays, because I have 6 children and 2 boys, 4 girls. And all of them went to Harvard and
but they shouldn't have.
Columbia, and this one and that one. And it breaks my heart to think that they accomplished that goal of getting into these institutions just because of the color.
I don't give a fuck how I get into Harvard. If I get in, I get
Of
in,
their
bro.
skin.
I can definitely say that it creates a lot of tension when you have affirmative action. I remember
I want my kids to get into Harvard the way everybody else does, because they got rich ass friends and connects.
First week at the University of
It makes me
Illinois,
sad that
I was
my
sitting
kids
with
had
some
to study
classmates,
and do
and a
extracurriculars.
white student turned to me and jokingly like, "Hey Xavier, like, did you just attach a smiley face when you applied for this college?" And I started asking what he meant, and he said to me that he was like, "You're black. I'm assuming you had decent grades. You could have just attached a smiley face and you would have gotten into the university." So I was livid by that, and I went off. I started naming all of my accomplishments, and I felt so confident only for about an hour. Because then an hour later, I started saying to myself, like, wow, like, did I actually earn my way in here? I started to have this insecurity, and I started wondering to myself, did I earn this position myself, or did my ancestors' suffering earn this for me?
And two, I've seen it in the sense of like affirmative
on a
action
weird
taking
hippie
away
level,
from
that
other
applies to
people who are
everybody.
minorities. Like I had a friend who was Asian and he in high school and he really wanted to go to MIT. That was his dream school. He interned there. He was super like prepared to go there and he didn't get in. And you can only assume that it was because of affirmative action because they have such a large Asian population that they want to admit other people.
Yeah, I was going to actually argue that it's more racist nowadays because it excludes so many Asian Americans from getting into universities who do deserve a spot, and they can't get in because of affirmative action, which, again, like you were saying, was necessary at the time. But now it's like anybody, if you have the skills to do it and you're in America, you can get in.
I don't think affirmative action is the worst thing, considering all the different types or aspects of a background you might take into account when somebody's getting into college, whether they were in certain clubs, Boy Scouts, what type of classes they took that might not be available to everybody. I don't think that factoring in the affirmative action is necessarily a bad thing, but I feel like because of everything you guys have said, the optics behind it are so horrible today that even if it is slightly beneficial in the long run for certain people, I think we can probably refocus most of that into figuring out like the class that people come from, the neighborhoods, the backgrounds or whatever, without it having to necessarily target race. The only thing that I kind of wonder now that it's gone is instead of a black person being in school thinking like, man, am I here because I'm an affirmative action pick, is it going to be a kid that is poor or a kid that's from a different zip code?
I think we should do away with all of it. It's just like submit an application, no demographics. Why do they ask your sexuality? Like why do they ask all that stuff?
Because they want diverse schools. Because if they didn't do that, you would see like straight up just like school of smart ass Asian people, bro. Low key. If they didn't ask all those questions. Maybe a bunch of people with strict ass parents.
If affirmative action accomplished its purpose, why do we still see the disparities that we do in the professional workplace? If you average white wealth and compare it to black wealth totals, white people as a whole have about 50 times greater wealth than black people as a whole per capita. So I just don't understand why you think affirmative action has accomplished its purpose. I don't see that.
Curious, why do you assume that just because there is a disparity means it's because of a racial issue?
What else would it be from?
I mean,
upbringing, economic abilities,
desire to
skills.
go, desire to.
Zip code does play a lot. If you grow up in a neighborhood that experiences a lot of trauma, you're not as likely to do as well in school, which means you're.
Why did they grow up in a neighborhood that experiences a lot of trauma?
I mean, lots of people do.
Yes, but why specifically do more black people?
Government assistance programs.
Government assistance programs. Like,
again, it's like the welfare was the problem, bro. They're giving us a leg up and it fucked us.
Try redlining.
I mean, you can go into that if you'd like to, but let's take
It
a
is
look
He's like, I don't want to. That doesn't matter to me.
at the Great Societies Act, which was created to kick black fathers out of the home.
God, this dude, he just got the wrong shit on his TikTok and his fucking YouTube algorithm. It's just everybody took one turn and bro took the other. And now he's probably popping off on Instagram.
Home and get black mothers on welfare assistance. These things aren't beneficial for economics. These things aren't beneficial for actually paving a way for success for black children and black families. I mean, reducing a two-family household to a one-family household isn't going to make them the richest man in the world. It isn't even going to get them out of high school. Nonetheless, the ability to even get to college.
You mean two-parent?
The child, yes, but a two-parent household in comparison to a one-parent household, that child is not going to be nearly as successful. That child is more disposed.
And the reason it's a one-parent household is because
prison
of
by
fucking
doing crime
welfare, bro.
or not doing very well in school. So how are they even supposed to get that, that wealth disparity shrunk if they aren't even able to get out of the community that is causing these problems for them?
Something I think that this conversation illustrates is that affirmative action is literally the very end of the line of a lot of different parts of a person's life. And by that point, trying to rectify all of the inequities that have existed, to try to remedy any of that at the very end with affirmative action, it might just be too broad a brush. And maybe we'd be better served focusing on the earlier issues than trying to throw a kid who maybe, can barely read at a 6th grade level into a college to hope that that's the thing that fixes the problem at the end of the line.
I think affirmative action wasn't really supposed to send kids to Harvard that weren't prepared to go to Harvard. I think that's quite a myth, in fact. I think those that have the qualities to get to Harvard were, before affirmative action, could just completely overlooked. Clarence Thomas is the perfect example. Regardless of what you think about him, he was able to get to Harvard because of affirmative action, because it focused on finding people that were,
Gatekeep, bitch.
you know, again, like just overlooked for those.
But things
all
ended
about-
up changing. It morphed into something else. So what started out as a good program of giving all black people or people with a lesser chance or lesser opportunity,
Clarence had
started
the
out
good
as that,
kind of
and then it
affirmative
morphed.
action.
And I'm not sure who morphed it, but it morphed into, okay, so now we have to have one black, one Hispanic, one this, one that.
That's not how that works.
But hey, talk to the corporations, talk to the people who hire, talk to the board members who say we need to have a woman on the board, we need to have a black on the board, we need to have a Latina,
We need
a
a black.
Latinx, whatever
Start.
on the board. So it morphed from helping us into now,
Tokenization.
yes. So you have to have one of this, one of that. And
Diversity hire.
Well, when you start with a country where people only hire you if you're white, that's necessary. And I know that you said that it started good and then ended whatever. And I don't think that affirmative action was perfect by any measure, but we still see really bad inequality. So if you're going to get rid of affirmative action, what's the replacement?
meritocracy.
Is people need to
There's no meritocracy in
Yes,
this
there
country. You look at Elon Musk, he's destroying Twitter. There's no meritocracy. That's ridiculous.
Well,
How
first thing I
bad
want to
the
bounce
best
back to is it's not a myth that there are like minorities that are being put into colleges that they're not ready for. If you look at a lot of these top universities, including Harvard, Yale, etc., you're going to see a lot of minorities on academic probation because they are being placed in universities that they are not ready for. They are not cut out for that just yet. And it even just makes sense if you look at how much they have to achieve in order to get there. Asian students on average have to score 450 points higher than a black student in order to get in the same university. So if you think of the universities that have courses, et cetera, that grade
true.
on a curve, you can only have so many people with an A, so many people with a B, et cetera. So that means that the bottom percentile is going to fail. Who is most likely, just based on logic, going to be the ones failing? It's going to be the people who didn't have the credentials to get there in the first place. And then I have to bounce back to.
I want to get you on
people need to
that
watch
point because
Kingsman.
I would posit that the people who are least likely to have good outcomes in an academic setting are those who have to work 2 jobs, are those who have to drive there from home because they can't afford a dorm, are those who have to go into crippling financial debt. These are and have other stresses in their life. They can't afford a doctor, they can't afford a dentist, they can't afford anything.
I had to do
so
that too, though.
those are the
That's
people.
not just black people. It's not just.
But it's
If we're looking at
overwhelmingly.
straight numbers, there are more white people in poverty than black people.
If you look at the raw numbers, but if you
I don't know,
actually
what are the
understand
wrong
what you're talking
numbers?
about.
No
The
number
issue
is
is poverty
wrong.
in general, though. I don't think it's like who's in poverty. It's like poverty sucks. It
Maybe we
shouldn't
should
matter
make
who's
college
in it.
free, and maybe we want to have
If you have a
affirmative action
program-
wouldn't be that necessary.
And it'll get even more ghetto.
If you have a program that says if you are under a certain income level, this is how we'll help you, that will overwhelmingly
Like
help
all the
black people at
colleges
a
in-
far greater
in Sweden,
percentage than it will
ghetto
help
as
white
fuck,
people.
dude. All those free colleges in Germany are just fucking ghetto. Oh wait, what was this question?
Lives.
Trump supports Black Lives. Oh my God, who came? Who's saying yes? Dude, this is the Ezra would walk over to this thing.
I think that President Trump supports all lives. I think that he looks at all American citizens as
Oh, that
equal.
kid's-
I don't see him
he's
doing
not a
anything
Trump
that would
conservative.
make you feel like he does not support Black lives. That's of course going to lead into the conversation of Black Lives Matter, which was a movement and an organization with so much corruption. Donald Trump not supporting that organization doesn't mean that he doesn't support Black lives. It just means that he doesn't support the fraudulent organization that's stealing so much money from so many people to do absolutely nothing with it, nor does he support a destructive movement that is destroying cities, communities, lives, etc. So I don't see why someone would think that President
The
Trump doesn't
line of
support Black
movements
lives.
that Trump supports that just collect money and do nothing.
I've heard him say he knows all the best black people. He has all the best black friends. I do support black people all the time. So sorry, that was a very bad impression, but I don't think Donald Trump wants bad things to happen to black people. So in that respect, I think he does support Black lives. But the other side of that is he's not really doing anything. He didn't do anything as president, certainly, to uplift black people.
The economy affects black people.
Yeah, I certainly disagree with that point. One of the biggest things I
What does he do for the
supported
economy?
personally. Well, yeah, we don't
Thriving.
look and get.
I hate that. What did he do? It was great. That's it. That is the Trump answer. That was the Trump answer. What are you gonna do to fix the economy? I'm gonna make it great. And then how his followers? Like, what? How did he fix the economy? He made it great. You know, he fucking made it great, dude.
We'll get into that one later. One of the biggest things.
Personally, me, I have felt no fucking difference in my my situation, economically or otherwise, in the switch of presidents? Fucking nothing. All right. I got one stimmy check, bro. They only give me one stimmy check. I'm so fucking hot right now. I don't know why.
Things he did is he secured permanent funding for HBCUs, one of the largest increases we ever saw for HBCUs, personally done by his administration, among many other things. The First Step Act, which, you know, there's a lot of debate about whether it was really the best thing to do, but that was definitely a kiss of love to the black race. Freeing Alice Johnson for menial drug crimes she committed in the past that have her locked up. She did not get to see her family for years.
Yeah, but that's not like, okay, I did say I agree. But I agree in the sense that Donald Trump doesn't literally want bad things to happen to black people, like I think a lot of conservatives do. So I think that he just says the most yeah, I do think that. I think he says the things that will get him elected. So I don't think that he has any personal grudges against certain, most people. He just says the most popular thing. So I think like Ron DeSantis would be, yeah, Ron DeSantis.
Hold on. I need water.
This would be somebody that I think actually wants black people to be hurt. So by that standard, yeah, Donald Trump supports Black lives by leaps and bounds.
You think Donald Trump says the most popular thing?
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Then why do so many people hate him?
He got elected as president.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
He didn't win the popular vote. Neither time.
That's a liberal
what your
talking
side
point.
likes to say.
That's a liberal talking
I'm
point.
helping you here. I'm trying to see the logic in this. Obviously, he says things to be elected as a politician very similarly to how Joe Biden did, except Joe Biden actually has a history of racism.
If he said things that people didn't like, he wouldn't have been our president.
So you like everything that Donald Trump says? You think everything he says is popular?
I love a lot of the things he says. I think he's hilarious. When he said big water, that was one of my favorite quotes. Big water.
Oh, see, now he's trolling.
Big water, ocean water.
He has the funniest one-liners, so I love a lot of the things he says. As far as policy, he sucks, but.
I'm just shocked you're wearing a Hunter Biden hat. He likes a different kind of one line.
Oh, I know, conservatives love talking about his.
No, Coke. It's different. Coke, not.
Bro was doing math.
Trump is less of the issue and more so the people that support him, like Die Hard. They facilitate that kind of like hate, I think, for a lot of people, not just black people, but like.
I mean, this man took out like a full page in a newspaper calling for the public execution of 5 black kids. His hotels, all of his businesses have rampant history of denying black people apartments or whatever. So
I forgot about that. I should not have stepped forward.
Look, I mean, Donald Trump cares about Donald Trump, so I don't think he really cares about anyone. I guess unless you're like super rich or whatever.
When you look at his history on racial issues, whether it's the shithole countries comment, the plethora of comments he made about Mexican people, just the comments he made about Muslims, the idea that Trump cares at all about some particular racial minority, I think is a little bit silly. I think Trump will say whatever he needs to say to rile up his base and to get elected.
I don't necessarily think those statements come from a place of hatred. I don't think he was ever saying specifically, oh, if you pray 5 times a day towards the east or towards Mega based on wherever you are, you're a bad person. I think he was saying if you like to fly planes into towers or behead people or throw people off of buildings, maybe you're not the most virtuous person out there.
I supported Trump because he made the economy good. And so the economy then impacted black people, white people, Latino people, it impacted everybody. But Trump, he did.
If they could just give one detail. Just one detail. Just one thing that made the economy good. Because they just say it was good.
Think specifically, I don't think about black people.
Dude, where is that? That was that one chart where it was like how conservatives feel about the economy. And like, it was like during presidents, right? And it was like how they thought highly, they thought it was great during Trump, great. And then Biden became president. Garbage. And then liberals were the exact opposite. Trump, garbage. Trump, Biden, oh my God, it's better now. All of a sudden, it's so much better.
He thought about himself, and he thought about how can I make America great for me, and making and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go with this guy, and the reason I'm gonna go with this guy is because if he can make America great and he can make that it rise for everybody, I'm gonna benefit from that. So that's why I went, and that's why I voted for him. That's why I supported.
That bitch. We gotta ask her how many MLM schemes she's fallen for. That's what we gotta ask her.
How does that specifically benefit black people? Again, he's a businessman, but he's also a racist businessman, like well documented so. So like
and Biden's not. Biden's not.
Yes, he is. He created the crime bill. So that's regardless of the point.
Address the Central Park 5. That's what you brought up, right? How do you feel about that?
Well,
he took
actually,
a full page out after they were
so I haven't.
He wanted them to be killed, executed, just because they were black.
That story.
And he bars people from attending his businesses or like renting apartments from all his like stupid Trump towers. I
think Trump at that point was, like many people in this room, particularly liberals, a victim of the media. I think he was scared. I think he was ashamed of the things that he heard in the news and wanted to take action himself as a businessman, not as a racist.
Why are you infantilizing him?
I don't like, also real quick, because people keep bringing up this comparison to the '93 crime bill from Biden. That crime bill, this was at the height of like violent crime and the crack epidemic in the United States. The Congressional Black Caucus supported that crime bill. Everybody in the United States supported that crime bill. The idea that that crime bill was like some racist piece of legislation that Biden was just wheeling out because he hates black people, and that's somehow comparable to the Donald Trump's treatment of the Central Park 5 that were already exonerated, that wasn't a victim of the media. The media said they were done. They were exonerated in court. They weren't there.
As I understand it, the prosecutor of the 5, he was a black guy, and so in being a black guy, he went and he looked at all the evidence and said these guys are guilty.
Black people can also be racist against other black people.
Or just make mistakes.
So if anybody does anything you disagree with in regards to the Central Park 5, even if they themselves are a black person, then they're just a self-loathing black person. They're just a racist black person.
If they disagree with me, they're racist.
That prosecutor was doing his job.
That's my policy. If they disagree with me, they're racist.
I like that.
I think Trump. I think Trump has.
Dude, it's not the move to troll like that, bro. Unless you do it from the jump, you can't flip-flop between trolling like that and serious talking. You gotta either troll the whole fucking time or be serious the whole fucking time, or like, with like a touch of a tiny bit. You can't. Yeah, he's flip-flopping, bro.
Has shown a history of ignorant at best and racist at worst behavior. I didn't vote for him or Hillary because I just don't see him as a conservative hero. I don't even think he's a conservative.
Fake
personally.
conservative. I voted Trump in 2016, just so you all know. So I'm just saying.
So I need you to elaborate on if people disagree with you, they're racist, just in general.
I was just kidding.
He's just, yeah.
You never know.
Just like
One
the
of those
hat.
kind of moments.
Sorry if I triggered you. I'm sorry.
You made a point. You made a point
Okay.
a couple of minutes back where you said he just kind of says these things to rile up his base. Why does he need to do that at the expense of black people then?
He doesn't do that at the. I am a member of his base, and I'm sitting there like, oh man, this is amazing. And I don't know, you can call me self-loathing, you can call me self-hating,
so you're saying calling
racist.
for the public execution of 5 black men that were exonerated to
When
rile
has he
up
done
his
that
base.
during the campaign trail? He didn't do that when he was a politician.
Well,
he did that when
again,
he was a scared businessman in New York.
It's
feeling
everything
bad.
Steve said about the comments about Muslims, the comments about Mexican immigrants. Why does he
never about Mexican immigrants, never about Muslims, about terrorists and about criminals and rapists. These are very important delineations to make, and if you believe that
think
what
you
fed the media
understand,
about,
or
it's all
I think
Mexican immigrants, I think it's more of you being, oh man, these poor Mexicans, they need to be supported. It's more.
I can picture this kid in middle school so bad, bro. Holy fuck, I just see it. Nobody liked that kid. That kid had 2 friends. And they were 2 of the whitest fucking kids you've ever fucking seen. Guaranteed. Oh my god.
More of that savior complex. Wow,
What was
we're
the
back
rationale
again.
behind axing or trying to axe DACA? These people were registered with the federal government, they were in school, they were doing everything that they needed to do. They had no home elsewhere. They were brought into this country as minors. Like, what's the explanation for that?
I think that requires more nuance. Like I mentioned before, I think there were some
for their
people.
education.
I think
Why
there
would
were
you
some
wanna kick
people
them out?
feeding him bad policy advice, thinking, "Oh, this will be really good for your base," and he's doing a lot as a president.
That's okay. That's okay if we feel that way. But
So,
at the end of
if I take responsibility for something, if I say he has responsibility for something, well then you're right. But if I'm saying, well, maybe there are some people around him advising him falsely,
Dude,
it's infantilizing.
He was the president.
There's no good way.
He
to do this
called
for
the
him.
shots. What are you talking about?
The only path forward to solving illegal immigration starts with amnesty for everybody here. The reality is there's some 10 to 15 million illegal immigrants here. We're not deporting them all.
With the people who are already here, that's a lot more of a messy, nuanced conversation. But as far as people coming in, I do think we need stronger borders and actual vetting happening.
And I just want to say, in Ronald Reagan's day, he was given the promise.
she loves Reagan.
He said, look, if you go ahead and you pass this particular bill, we'll give these people amnesty and we're done. And it didn't happen. We didn't. Illegal immigration continued even after Reagan already said we would give these people amnesty. So that's why we get a burr up our butt, because he had already done it.
Hopefully the devil's giving him amnesty.
True.
That's terrible.
No, that's base. Thank you.
Tasteless.
Ninth circle, baby.
My political beliefs have changed from the past.
True.
He had already done it.
Hopefully the devil's giving him amnesty.
True.
That's terrible.
No, that's base. Thank you.
Tasteless.
Ninth circle, baby.
And they said that about
My
Trump,
political
Biden. They
beliefs
don't
have
like
changed
the
from
exact
the past.
opposite. Everybody would flip reactions. They wouldn't be like, "That's a tasteless."
I grew
Joe
up in a
Biden."
conservative household, actually, in Ohio. And my parents were always pretty political, so I always stayed political. I was very religious as a teenager. Sometime during college and then afterwards, especially during COVID, my sister actually indoctrinated me into a more leftist position. And I overcorrected a little bit. I started becoming pretty cringy as far as sit down and let the minorities all talk, right? Don't say anything, don't speak over them, etc. They would, it was like the whole you can't speak over Candace Owens even if she's literally a Nazi kind of thing. So I stand by that.
I mean, she'd be questioning.
So yeah, I kind of leveled out, thankfully, and I'm less cringe now.
Did you? Are you?
I cringed.
This is leveled out. Imagine if we would have been here a year ago.
I mean, maybe I am being cringe. Who cares?
So I grew up conservative,
He's
but
a
I did
little
have more
cringe.
left-leaning ideas about Black Lives Matter and critical race theory, and I was watching a lot of YouTube, and I did agree that Black people were oppressed and all of these different things, and that we were kind of got the short end of the stick. And during 2020, when there was everything crazy was happening, and I started organizing rallies against the mandates because I thought that they were just totally unconstitutional and un-American. And then George Floyd dies. And initially I was enraged like everybody else. And then it started to become this weird political agenda masquerading or behind his face. The face of what was actually happening started to peel off. And I was like, oh, I would counter protest BLM activists at my town square when I lived in Texas. And they were some of the most just bitter, vile, horrible people you could ever meet. Meanwhile, the Confederate group that would protest there against them also. They were the nicest people ever to me, ironically.
I grew up in a Democratic, not a Democratic household, but kind of apolitical, but everybody was Democrat. And then I got
Are we sure
a
they
job.
knew she was Black?
And when I got a job and I saw
Are
all the
we
taxes
sure?
come out, and I started looking to the left and to the right and going, oh, my money's whittling away over here. And I said, you know what? After Reagan, I'm just going to go ahead and declare myself a Republican, and I've been a Republican ever since.
My mom is pretty liberal.
Her husband's gotta have a successful construction company or something, bro. Something's going on.
She
there.
married my stepdad when I was 15, 16 in high school, and he's super conservative, loved Trump, diehard Trump fan. And they had a lot of back and forth, hearing the two sides, people who are on such polar opposites, just argue all the time about stuff. Seeing that there's a lot of similarities in both sides, the far radical left and the far radical right, they have a lot of similarities. They just don't want to come and see it.
I started off actually kind of similar to you. I went to a Jesuit high school. I grew up very conservative. My mom is Cuban, so ride or die Bush supporter who is now a ride or die Trump supporter. I think the point in my life when I was the most like libertarian was probably the lowest point in my life financially. And I think it's because something that conservatives do really well is they make you feel like you can always like succeed as long as you work hard enough. And that's something that progressives and liberals suck at, that you're a victim of systemic racism, you're black so you're going to be discriminated against, you're a woman so nobody's going to care about your feelings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas Republicans will tell you, listen, if you work hard, you can do whatever you want, like just as long as you're willing to put in the work. And I felt that way up to the moment where I was losing my house, where I had an ex-girlfriend that was pregnant, where I had been fired from my previous job. There was a whole bunch of horrible stuff going on in my life, and I very, very luckily got into online content creation. And from there, as I started to make more money, I started to pay more taxes. When I get older and I look at taxes that come out of my paycheck, I care a little bit, but it was just so funny to me that back when I was making $15,000, $20,000 a year, I'm like, I gotta vote for the lower tax bracket, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm barely paying any taxes anyways. And now that I'm older, like if the government wants to take, a few, 10, 20, whatever, how many more $1,000 out.
You just said you worked hard.
I did, but I got very, very, very lucky doing so. Very lucky.
Do you think it's just luck?
It's not just luck, but the difference is that born into a wealthier family, you can make so many more mistakes in life. And when you're born poor, you get like one or two before your life is over. And that's really sad to me.
Yeah, so I used to be a liberal. I voted for Bernie Sanders in 2016 as much
What
as I regret that
happened?
now. My family was pretty left-wing. Some of the people in my family were like radically left, like would refer to white people as blue-eyed, red-headed devils, things of that nature. And as I got older, I actually started
It's so fucking fun. Like this panel is like, why liberals, black conservatives, they all just grew up. Like, it's just people who like went the other way from where they were raised.
being really outspoken for BLM. I was supposed to be on a reality show teaching people how to be a BLM activist. At the time, I did a deep dive on BLM and I started to realize all of these lies. So then I took a step back. I'm like, okay, what else am I being lied to about? And I started looking at the Democratic Party and questioning my own loyalty to being on the left.
I personally think both sides tend to be racist in different ways. I don't think the government is on the side of the people in general, and that's just me being, a radical.
When I was young, I used to jump for joy and say, oh yeah, Obama, black president, that's so amazing. He's the same color as me. But when I started to do more research, one of the biggest things I was confused about is, well, why is he a Democrat? What is a Democrat? I did more research about the Democrat Party. And sure, you guys are going to pop off about the head saying, oh, there's a party switch in the Southern strategy and all these things.
Which is true.
Which you may say is true. I don't believe it is true at all.
You're
I
wrong.
understand, you may think I'm wrong.
You are.
However, one of the biggest
It doesn't seem like a thing you can have an opinion on. Seems like there's one
questions I had was, why is Obama in the same party as the people that started the KKK, the same people that voted against the Civil Rights Act, the same people that are on the news talking about how black people aren't able to accomplish anything and need to be on welfare and need to be promoted with affirmative action and things of that nature?
I also, in terms of, I guess, of my political journey, I was raised conservative, actually. And then high school became, I guess, sort of apolitical. And then throughout college and I guess just throughout my life since then, I think I guess you can call me a progressive, you can call me, socialist, whatever you, but I guess that's, in the area of where I fall. You said that you were a Bernie fan in 2016 and then you transitioned to being, I guess, more conservative. I guess, I don't know, to me, Bernie Sanders, from what he said to what you think now, what was the shift?
For me, it was socialism, because back then I was a very broke college kid and I just had this mentality that everything should be free, and I was feeling a bit entitled, like everything should be handed to me because I was black, because I was very much in that mentality. As I learned more about free markets, as I learned more about capitalism, I started to appreciate that much more. I started to appreciate small business much more, limited government, low regulations. I just started to like that much more. But I would say just more when it comes to economics, I don't agree with him.
Reparations are necessary.
Damn. He doesn't agree on economics. Is where he's like, fuck Bernie. Fuck raising wages. Fuck corporations paying taxes. Fuck all of that. Fuck supporting.
When we talk about reparations, I think that doing reparations in the way that a lot of people think of it, where we just give it to black people, I'm not an expert on this, but I think it would be more income-based, and that in itself, like I said earlier, would disproportionately benefit black people, because if you recognize that they are disproportionately affected by a systemic injustice, then doing it on like a class level would uplift proportionally more black people than white people or any other race.
Yeah, I think like
Whore!
mostly like black GIs that were left out of like the New Deal, for instance, that to be able to come back and as a white American, as a white veteran, to get a home loan and then build that generational wealth, you could not get that as a black American. So there needs to be, I think, reparations. I don't care really what form it comes from. I think free healthcare, free college, so that everyone has like an equal opportunity to educate themselves, to build a better life for themselves. So it's sort of like, and I think Germany is also a perfect model to follow, you know, by issuing, first of all, a formal apology, which we haven't even done that, but also just like donating to like different funds, and you know, just I think a more equitable society striving for that is reparations in and of itself.
I have no problems with reparations if they had happened initially during the like slavery or the civil rights movement or any of that. But to try and do that now logistically, it just doesn't really make any sense. And like, where would this money come from? Like, we're in so much debt as a nation. Would I get this money? I'm biracial or triracial. Like, do mixed people get it? And like, do Irish people get reparations when they were indentured servants?
I think for reparations, if you can find specific instances of somebody being like actually deprived of something, whether specific instances of like the 40 acres and a meal promise, or whether you can find specific cases of like Chinese people building railroads or Irish people or whatever, people being deprived of things, that's okay. But otherwise, yeah, it's a logistical nightmare. There's no possible way that we'd be able to do it well.
Yeah, America's unique because we have bent over backwards for decades now, putting minorities in a position of privilege. I feel like we have done so much to give back to the communities that were obviously wronged. And I agree with both of you. Like, had this happened a long time ago, I would understand it. If we had specific incidences that we could trace where people were just completely screwed over, I would respect it. But right now, I don't deserve a payment for something my great-great-great-great-grandparents went through, and I don't think that white people are responsible for paying that to me either.
I know we don't want to use the word virtue signaling, but it's sort of like a bribe for a vote in a way, at least in my opinion. In states like California, where they've been throwing around the idea of, oh, we want to pay out this much money to every black citizen in there, in this state, it's like, oh, are you serious? Because this is kind of like a joke, in my opinion.
I think that if we impose reparations now, I think it would rip America apart. I think that we're already separated enough as it is, and now you're going to have people walking around going, you owe me money, you owe me money, I'm not paying you any money. It would just really rip us apart.
Giving somebody money doesn't mean anything if they don't know what to do with the money or how to handle the money. So if the primary issue in black culture or with black people is generational trauma, then maybe they need more therapy than they need money, honestly.
Which conservatives are also against.
Well, that's kind of my argument. Like, if there is like that, like generational trauma or whatever, like I think examples of like free healthcare, they could see a therapist and not be, you know, fall into debt. And I think the argument of like the logistical nightmares of it, I think if we want to pay for something in this country, we usually find a way to do it, especially when it comes to the military. So, I mean, we pay for multi-billion-dollar jets all the time.
It's not the dollars, it's who's supposed to get them.
Not to attack progressives, but that is like the most progressive idea in the world. Is like, I can see the headlines like reparations voted on in Congress to be paid in the form of free therapy for people in the hood. That just sounds like the funniest thing in the world. But
well, I also don't think it's gonna come directly from like, you know, white person to black person. Like, oh, your lineage affected his lineage.
It is though. Like in San Francisco, they were going to raise the average family, or the average household in San Francisco was expected to pay $600,000 each with the $5 million per black person proposal that they had. And I used to live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I was repulsed by that because you have so many homeless veterans on the streets, and they were going to give black people a home for as little as $1 just for being black. Mind you, slavery wasn't even in California. So why that was going to be the case, like, I don't understand, but it's extremely unrealistic to think that the average family in San Francisco can afford that.
That's because Newsom wants to get reelected.
Okay, but you don't really care about homeless veterans, right?
That's just
you
a
don't support
idea.
You don't know
I
me.
feel like all your arguments are ad hominem.
But you're
literally
here as a
every single one ad hominem.
You're here as a conservative. So what policies do you support for homeless veterans?
There's ways to address, I mean,
specifically
for homeless and
I really blew it. I got too emotional. I'm too focused on black issues right now.
general.
That's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say that we didn't find a middle ground in there.
Yeah.
All right.
But that's a great ending note.
White liberals have a savior complex.
Everybody walks forward. Yeah. On God, everybody's gotta walk forward.
Well, I gotta say, this is a shock. I never expected all 4 of you to just come forward and admit it, but you know what? I'm happy with these results.
I just think
hate
it's.
this kid. He thinks them walking forward is them saying we have the conflict. Like, I fucking hate this kid. Oh my God, this.
People, a lot of, I guess, people, of the left, whatever, can kind of fall into that trap of thinking that, black people as a monolith need to be saved as, like, as a whole.
I have no shame about it. I have a savior complex as an older brother, and I will save you whether you like it or not. So that's just me.
He's 18, bro.
Well,
He's
it's definitely
fucking
not, because a lot of us are really just exhausted of being viewed as our skin color. Because when you have this mindset that you need to save black people and we're just sitting here minding our own business and living our lives the way we want to, I don't know why it is that people feel this immense pressure to be so apologetic and just always trying to cater and coddle to black people when we just want to be treated like everybody else. We're equal for a reason.
I think especially recently with a lot of riot stuff that's gone on or protest stuff that's gone on, people on the left tend to infantilize a lot of different types of protesters, and especially even talking to some of the other black content creators I do content with, when you hear a lot of progressives come out and say, well, they don't have a choice but to riot or break into the store, or, well, they're stealing, these electronics or shoes for good reasons, you just don't realize it. I think a lot of people kind of look both ways, and it's a little bit weird that there's such a complex on the left to excuse like every single possible negative behavior from somebody, as long as they're a skin color that you're kind of in charge of protecting.
I find that very offensive.
Yeah.
I find it
really
extremely, it upsets me to hear that, because we're just like you. We just have a different skin color, and to hear that you have to help me is offensive to me. I can do it on my own.
Well, we have to break down sometimes why these riots happen. MLK once said that riots are the voice of the unheard. So if you are to address the problem and stop the riots, you have to address the underlying inequality that has historically been pervasive. Even if you as individual people are doing fine and you don't want anybody else to get in the way of that, that's cool, and I'm not going to be the one to get in the way, but the disparities are undeniable.
So if you take pride in having like a white savior complex, what is it that you think that you're doing to save black people, and what is it that you think that you're saving black people from?
I am trying to make the world a better place through whatever means I can.
But you're doing it on the backs of us.
I wouldn't say so.
Yeah, I actually do. I feel like you want to be a savior and you're using me to make yourself feel good. That's what I'm hearing.
How am I hurting you?
You're not letting me have my own voice. You're not letting me speak.
How? You're speaking now?
No,
you're cutting her off.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like I have to.
Yeah. Well, what's happening? I mean, you're speaking right now. You're speaking right now in this particular setting. But what you're saying is, like, you took it back to riots and so forth, and it makes it seem like the only way that we as black people can have a voice is by riots, and then you need to come along and you need to say, okay, poor little black child, let me help you, let me help you. That's offensive to me. And I feel like you're making yourself feel good about trying to help us. And
I also think that, like, when we talk about damage, I think especially when it comes to a lot of the shoplifting stuff that's going on in certain cities, you get a lot of white people that live in nice suburbs saying things like shoplifting is no big deal, that's fine, and then you'll catch YouTube videos of them later on being in a Walgreens in like a shoddy neighborhood, and they're like, man, why is the deodorant behind a locked case? It's very easy to sit behind a gated community and say, oh, well, it's not a big deal, they steal because they have to. Riots are the language of the unheard. I think people haven't read the full context of that quote. When MLK was saying riots were the language of the unheard, you need to address the underlying condition. He wasn't condoning the rioting, he was just understanding it.
Obviously, there are a bunch of white people that feel they need to be a savior, but I think there's a difference between helping and saving. Like, I don't think I would need to save black people, but I would tremendously love to help and make sure everyone has like equal outcome, or not equal outcome, but at least equal opportunity, which in my opinion, I feel we do not have in this country.
This is awkward. Hi guys. So I didn't step forward just because I don't want to broad brush all white liberals as having a white savior complex. I have experienced white liberals who do have that, and they're very unpleasant people. But I don't think every single white person who's a liberal or who is an activist for BLM or any of those things necessarily has a white savior complex. I think that there's a lot of white people who genuinely think that black people are oppressed and they want to help, and that's what they're told.
What it seems like to me, when most people have savior complex, regardless of whom they're trying to save, it's like they're taking real pain and real trauma and using that as a way to push this political agenda, but also to alleviate themselves of whatever guilt that they feel unnecessarily. Like, I don't know why a white person today would feel guilty for things that happened decades ago, let alone something that happened centuries ago.
I've never seen a white person say, I personally feel guilty for slavery.
I
Maybe they're
promise
out there, but I've never heard that.
Yeah, in second grade when they taught us about slavery, almost every kid in my classroom would spend their entire time looking at black kids in that classroom. How was I supposed to?
We can't, dude, we gotta, no. You can't, you gotta have a year out of high school at bare minimum to say anything. Fucking anything.
To not think, wow, these people are feeling guilty for something that they have no involvement in and I have no involvement in.
Every kid in my classroom understood the context.
People
so.
hate feeling uncomfortable, and obviously you don't want to feel like the bad guy, and so I feel like it comes from a place of like, oh, well, like, let me make sure that I'm different and like I'm showing you that I want to like help you, but it comes across like I think it can land very poorly.
I'll tell you what, stop it. Stop it. Because what happens is when you put yourself as the white savior, what you do is you elevate yourself above the black person because you feel then like you have to save us.
Is her thing, does that extend outside of race for her? Like, if somebody tries to help her with anything, does she take that as like a dig? Is she like, fuck you?
So just stop it. Just treat everybody regular and normal, just like I would treat you regular and normal. You treat us regular and normal rather than trying to save us.
I just got one thing I wanted to bring up earlier about taxes.
I would love to be like, do you
because
treat
you were
trans
saying
people regular
that
and
you
normal?
don't, you had your job and you were talking about how like you get the tax every time and you're like seeing your tax go up. I worked in nursing homes in 2020 COVID.
What the fuck just happened?
The last thing that was on my mind when I watched 60 and 70-year-olds on their deathbeds suffocating to death was taxes. I was worried about health care. I didn't give a shit about taxes in that time. So when I go to work every day, that's what I see. That's what I want to fix.
Why the game just crashed on me, bro?
I see you once again elevating yourself above the rest of us, and particularly at me, a white man elevating himself above a black person.
He called me a bootlicker.
He
called me a bootlicker.
Oh no, I triggered them all. I'm sorry. I'm
not
sorry.
triggered. I'm chilling, buddy.
Yes, you are.
Dude, honestly, it's like it's so shit to tell somebody I'm sorry I triggered you, because it's such like you just put them in a corner. They can't say anything.
I hope comes out of this
chilling.
conversation is that we're all Americans, and because we're all Americans, we know that America has a bunch of problems, and I think every person here wants to solve the problems, and I think everybody is bringing what they have to the table with their ideas on how to get us to unify. This kind of stuff, right? But you got something in there. Hopefully, I mean, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt that you have something in there that's redeeming about you that would bring all of Americans together. So I hope that we end on the note of American.
UNITY.
I would like to say we're all made in the image of God, and so we're all have our inerrant worth just because we're made in His image, and we should treat each other as fellow image bearers, not just by the color of our skin. I mean, as Martin Luther King said.
He also did not like capitalism.
I think something that's really challenging, I've definitely been guilty in the past of throwing around the Uncle Tom word. I used to be hardcore progressive. I'm still relatively progressive. But something that I've learned as time has gone on is being a white person isolates you from a lot of the different types of racial struggles that people go through. And those struggles can take a lot of different forms. Not just, was my ancestor a slave, and not just is my culture bad, but sometimes in the way that, people grow and develop, right? Like, am I actually choosing these political beliefs because they mean something to me, or is it because I'm black or my parents are black? If I speak a certain way, am I betraying my race? If I am a political orientation, am I a bootlicker? And I think that it's important when you're coming from a progressive point of view view to understand that even though there are conservatives that are black people, you have to treat them as individuals and not just come at it with this like, you're black, you're a conservative, therefore here's like 6 or 7 different slurs that I can use against you, but they're approved because I happen to be on the progressive side.
Bro, I just know they left so much better shit, so much better content out in that video. I just know. Fuck Rocket League. If it wants to crash on me, I'm gonna crash on it. Bitch. 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 Excuse me. Jesus, fuck. I'm gonna go take a quick little break, skis. Gonna put this song on while I go. And then music time. I need a genre. I don't know what genre I'm hitting today, bro. It's like the gym. What genre are we hitting today? I guess I could actually just mute this. I'll be right back.